Hi there, my name is Devin Everitt. I am a visual communication design student at Cal Poly Pomona. Today, we will be analyzing The Scream by Edvard Munch and The Problem We All Live With by Norman Rockwell, two different 2D specimens, in a hope to better understand the semiotics used as well as the design principles prevalent in each piece. We will dive into a brief history of each specimen to set the context and begin a compare and contrast study as well. I will then shed some light on how each piece has impacted the culture during its time and continues to do so during our time. If you have any questions or concerns with any info in the video, please leave a comment below and I will reach out with a response. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and let's get right into this. So, to start off, let's examine the history of each piece. The first piece we will look at is The Scream by Edvard Munch. Originally created back in 1893, The Scream was essentially an autobiographical work based on a vision Munch had one day. In his diary, he wrote of this experience and portrayed a world that seems to be spinning out of control. However, the characters are set on a bridge, totally unaffected by the chaos around it. This stark contrast gives a feeling of internal struggle, anxiety, and confusion. This makes all the sense for Munch, as he had endured plenty of tragedy in his life. Munch's approach to the union of the senses resulted in a visual depiction of sound and emotion. The Scream represents a key work for the symbolist movement and a major inspiration for expressionists during the early 20th century. Munch sought to express internal struggles or emotions through external forms, and thus provided a visual image for a human experience. Now that we've talked about The Scream by Edvard Munch, let's move on to The Problem We All Live With by Norman Rockwell, a controversial painting that became a symbol of the American Civil Rights Movement. Rockwell created this painting in 1964, depicting a young Ruby Bridges, an African-American girl who was among the first to end segregations in schools during the 1960s, walking down the sidewalk as onlookers throw tomatoes and shout racial slurs at her. Rockwell thought it necessary to shed light on the controversial themes of the time, such as poverty and racism. Now that we have discussed a brief history of each 2D specimen, let's start a visual analysis to better understand the semiotics and design principles used by each artist. Since we are already looking at Rockwell's piece, let us pull it up again to ask ourselves what exactly is the message we as the viewers are supposed to be understanding. Take a moment to notice some things that stand out to you. Look at the foreground and the background of the painting. Also, ask yourself why these colors were used. Take a note of the composition and the scale of the subjects in the painting. How does your eye move around the painting, and what do you think is helping guide your eye? These are some things that we as visual communication design students should be looking for when doing a visual analysis of an art piece. Have you taken note of some things you are visually seeing? If so, awesome. Keep those in mind and see if anything I cover lines up to what you were thinking as well. Firstly, let's talk composition. The main subject, young Ruby, is framed by what we can infer are US Marshals, just by looking at the armbands those marshals are wearing. These marshals are partially shown with just their body showing, and all are walking in lockstep, suggesting a sense of seriousness and authority. Ruby, however, is smaller in comparison, and the viewer's eye level is from the perspective of a child as well. This brings the viewer into the world of Ruby and how she might feel small in the world she currently lives in. Also, Ruby is leading with the opposite foot, suggesting diversity and change. She is also placed more towards the marshals in front, which lets the viewer get a sense of urgency from her, as if she wanted to get away from all the hate and finally start to live her life. All of this allows the piece to have balance. Now, if we shift our focus onto the background for a moment and notice it only as prominent colors, we can see white and red clearly. But if you take a closer look, there are words that have been painted on the wall in a faint bluish tone. What other symbol do we know of that uses the colors red, blue, and white? Well, the first that comes to my mind would be the American flag, a symbol of unity and freedom. This idea of newfound freedom repeats again in the items Ruby is holding: a blue notebook with the star cover, a yellow ruler, as well as blue and red pencils. Rockwell uses these colors to create an emphasis that equality was a prominent idea he was trying to get across to us as viewers. Let us now take a break from Rockwell and turn our attention to Edvard Munch and his work The Scream. Again, take a moment, look around the painting. What do you notice about the foreground, the background? How is it composed? What do you notice about the colors being used? Again, these are all things you should be looking at as a visual communication design student. Now that you've taken a brief moment on your own to examine the artwork, let me jump on in and give you some clarifications on what you may be noticing. In terms of composition, we see the main screaming figure, aka Munch's rendition of his own internal emotions, placed centrally as the focal point, and the diagonal lines of the bridge take your eye into the painting, while the more wavy and expressive lines of the background lead your eye around and back to the main figure. The same wavy lines repeat themselves both in the figure and background, creating a sense of pattern. This gives the art piece stability. The medium used is quickly and expressively applied to allow the viewer to really feel the emotion behind the artwork. And the predominant use of bright red in the sky may symbolize anger or torment, as red is a color often associated with these emotions. Also, in contrast to the gray and beige color of the face makes the figure look ghostly. Both pieces impacted their respective cultures immensely. The Scream was so well loved, it was stolen not once, but twice. Once in 1994 and once in 2004. But luckily, both were only renditions. And Arthur Lubbo, a popular journalist during the late 70s, described The Scream as an icon of modern art, a Mona Lisa for our time. Rockwell's piece was also profound for its time, and controversial as well. This artwork allowed the viewer to really step into the world of someone different, to really see and understand the hate brought upon them. And both are also still very prominent in today's culture, with Munch's piece being inspiration for movies such as Scream and the Silenced Creatures from Doctor Who. Also, Rockwell's message of equality and justice is not a lonely one. There have been and will be endless artworks depicting the struggle to achieve pure social and economic equality. And Ruby Bridges, till this day, is an avid social justice warrior and often refers to herself in this painting and praises Rockwell for going against the grain and depicting true human nature. So even though both are two very different 2D specimens in terms of design, they share a similar message of confusion and anxiety. They both also allow the viewer to step into their own perspective worlds and to experience wholly what the artist intended. And now we come to a close. We have gone over the history, we have talked about the design elements and principles, we have discussed the similarities and differences, as well as the cultural impacts of each piece. But now, sadly, our time together is coming to an end, and I will leave you with thoughts from my own perspective. I look at The Scream, and I'm reminded of my own internal struggle with anxiety and depression. I relate to Munch's need to express these feelings, and we both have similar styles of execution. And as an African American citizen, I can also relate to the struggle of social acceptance due to the color of one's skin. I too am an avid social justice warrior and hope to one day be able to capture a moment so iconic that it rivals that of Norman Rockwell's. So, if you've made it this far into the video, I congratulate you. And again, if you have any concerns or questions, please leave a comment below. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.